Homeschool socialization is overrated. And I know that's one of the scariest things that people imagine when they start to think about homeschooling. Parents picture their child going from a classroom full of kids to being exiled at the kitchen table, banished to doing school alone with mom forever. But what if I told you that what kids really need isn't just more socialization? What they crave is something deeper, and it can show up in so many different places and ways in homeschooling. So if the question of socialization has been keeping you up at night, don't worry. That's exactly what we're unpacking today. I'm going to tackle some of the biggest socialization myths, and I'm going to show you why homeschooling can help you create richer, more lasting relationships, not just for your kids, but for the whole family. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Elon Page, homeschool mom of two, and I help families reimagine education in a way that fits your life, empowers your kids, and gives your family freedom. Today, I'm tackling one of the biggest fears that holds many parents back when it comes to homeschooling, and that is the dreaded fear of no socialization. But what about friends, they say? Are my kids going to end up weird and alone for the rest of their lives? Well, listen, if that's you, you're certainly not alone, because one of the very first things that I looked for when we made the decision to homeschool was community, because I have two very, very social daughters, and I didn't want them missing out on opportunities to interact with their peers. But let me tell you about one of my clients, because I bet you're going to be able to relate. So she has an only child, and when they started their homeschool journey, socialization was her biggest hurdle. She was laser focused on finding community, so she thought maybe a learning pod would be the perfect solution. But after a few visits, though, her son just wasn't really impressed. The learning pod had a really heavy nature focus, which is fine, but it just wasn't something that really lit him up. But what did light him up was basketball. They joined a local rec league, and through that, one of the parents recommended a travel basketball team. So then that travel basketball team became his biggest source of community, and he absolutely loves it. And here's the kicker. I tried to reassure her from the very beginning that community will come. Even if the first attempt or two isn't the right fit, once you connect to something, it will often lead to other connections. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And then on top of that, later, a learning center even opened up near their house, which gave them yet another outlet for community and a whole different set of experiences. And so that's why I tell parents not to panic. Community is out there. It just doesn't always necessarily look like what we expect on day one. So let's now get into some of these socialization myths that I continue to hear over and over again, and I'm sure that you do too. Myth number one is that kids need a classroom full of their same age peers in order to be socialized. But here's the truth. Schools group kids by age and by zip code, and that's really convenience, not real connection. But homeschooling gives you the freedom to help your kids find peers in ways that align with their passions and their interests. And it's not about being overbearing as parents and controlling their whole friend experience, but it is about being intentional. So my client's son found his friends through basketball, right? And then my daughter has found her besties in theater. Your child might bond with their peers over a love of STEM or maybe art or coding. So don't panic if your homeschool settings look different than a traditional school classroom. In fact, these shared interest friendships are often the ones that last a lifetime. Now, here's myth number two. Homeschoolers are sheltered and lonely. But the truth is, homeschool kids often interact with a wider variety of people than they would in a classroom of same age peers. So they learn how to talk with younger children, with older kids, with adults, which actually builds stronger social skills in the long run. Because think about it, homeschoolers are in co-ops, they're in sports teams, church groups, music lessons, community events, on and on. So their worlds are not just limited to one singular classroom. And the beauty is that these interactions feel more natural and less forced. So instead of being told who to sit next to or when to talk, homeschoolers often get to practice social skills that they'll use every day in real life. And then here's myth number three. If kids aren't making friends at school, they won't have time to make them anywhere else. But here's the truth. Homeschooling actually gives you more freedom and time to create meaningful experiences where friendships naturally happen. So instead of being tied to a rigid school schedule, you can meet friends when you're out exploring the world or invite them to come along with you. So for example, my girls and I went on a field trip to the NASA Space Center in Houston. They were having their homeschool day, and we met so many new friends that day. Now, some of those families live in the same city where we live, and we've been able to stay in touch. I even ran into a fellow alumna from my beloved Spelman College who had brought her kids along. So talk about community in action. And then here's another example. Our co-op that we're a part of is taking a road trip to Oklahoma to visit Native American historical sites as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. And trips like that don't just teach history, they give kids and parents the chance to connect deeply with others in ways that the traditional classroom schedule simply won't allow. And then here's myth number four. Socialization is only about the kids. But here's the truth. Homeschooling doesn't just create opportunities for children to make friends, it also opens up the door for the entire family to build community. Moms, dads, siblings, everybody gets the chance to form lasting relationships that make the whole homeschool journey richer. Because let's face it, in traditional school, parent interaction is often limited to drop off and pick up, and maybe a quick wave in the carpool line, but not really a whole lot more. But with homeschooling, you're side by side with other families at co-ops and field trips and sports and even casual hangouts. And so those shared experiences bring entire families closer together, not just the kids. Now, let me give you a personal example. So when my bestie got married, my husband and I realized that we didn't really have a convenient place for our girls to stay the weekend that we were away at the wedding. Now, sure, I could have asked an auntie or a cousin or someone to let them stay with them, but truthfully, they've got their own kids and schedules to juggle. Plus, one of my girls had a volleyball game on Saturday that would have made those schedules a lot trickier. So I happened to be talking with a fellow co-op mom whose daughter also plays on our daughter's volleyball team, and she happily offered to host my girls for the weekend. And let me tell you, they had the best time. They went to the volleyball game, they went to their son's soccer game, they had a movie night, they went to church on Sunday, and they even spent hours swimming in their backyard pool. So when I got back in town, my girls were not ready to leave yet because, of course, they were having a blast, right? So my friend told me to just pull up a chair and hang out in the backyard with them. And it ended up being such a kickback. It was really a fun weekend for both of our families. But here's the thing though, that type of trust and connection would not have happened if we hadn't already spent so much time together as homeschool families. But that is the kind of deep connection and community that homeschooling makes possible. So what now? Well, I want to invite you to take the next step. I have a free resource called my Start Homeschooling Workshop, and it's going to walk you through 5 key steps to begin homeschooling with confidence. And the very last step of that workshop is all about building connection and community, because I know firsthand how vital that truly is in this homeschool journey for both you and for your kids. And you can get instant access to that free workshop at homeschoolourway.com/start, or I'll link to it in the description. So here's the big takeaway for today. Y'all, socialization is overrated, but meaningful connection is what can and should be our real goal. So no, homeschooling doesn't have to be lonely for your kids, not at all. Instead, it can be filled with fulfilling relationships that grow out of their unique passions, their interests, and their personalities. And as homeschool families, we get the freedom to create environments that foster those types of friendships. So be encouraged, knowing that even if you may be struggling to find it, community will come. And it may not look like the classroom in a traditional school, and it may take you a little time to find your people. But when you do, the bonds run deeper than you could ever imagine. So that's it for today, and I hope you found this episode helpful. Make sure to subscribe and keep tuning in for continued support in your homeschool journey. And don't forget, learning never ever stops, and homeschool is a beautiful way to live that out. I'll see you in the next one.